Hey, it's Roy, Big Country Nelson here, and you're watching Hannibal TV, and you're watching my interview.
So could you tell me what it was like growing up here in Vegas?
You know what? Growing up here in Vegas is one of those, you kind of get the best of both worlds, I guess, you know, because it is Sin City, so you get to see the good side, and you get to see the bad side. But for me, like, when Vegas started back when I was born, I mean, that was a long time ago, it was a small town, like everything was on the strip, and now there's still everything on the strip, but now it's away from the strip, so like, I mean, back when I was born, I think there was maybe 280,000 people, now I think we're up to 2 million, so it definitely lost that small town feel, you know, so it's one of those different aspects.
Did you have a pretty good childhood?
Childhood-wise, it's definitely one of those, you know, like, definitely a book type, memoirs type stuff, you know, where you're like, okay, where did you come from? Did you come from a good house? Did you come from a, you know, like a divorced family? Like, I came from a divorced family, and I got to see the both sides of the, you know, like, I got to see the poor side, and I got to see the, you know, we'll say, I don't want to say rich, but the more established side of, you know, so I got to see both extremes of the spectrum, and then I think that, you know, definitely shaped who I was today.
And you did amateur wrestling when you were young. How did you do in amateur wrestling? I
did really well in amateur wrestling, like, but I didn't know what wrestling was until high school. So like for me, I wish I would have found wrestling when I was younger, but I didn't even know what wrestling was until I think my sophomore year.
Okay.
And then it was like because of PE, like it was like PE, and the coach was like, "Why don't you try out?" And then now, my coach is actually one of the winningest coaches in Nevada.
Oh, wow.
So, and then the one thing I mean, my claim to fame besides being on TV is you can go to my high school and you can still see my name on the wall. So I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And were you already doing martial arts before you started wrestling?
Yeah, no, I started martial arts when Karate Kid came out and American Ninja, but like that's, you know, that's the thing that popped. You know, everybody my age is, you know, like that's when you want to be a martial artist because you're like, I want to be a ninja. And then the older I got, I found out that ninjas are actually bad. I don't want to be a ninja, so then I just went back to doing Karate Kid.
So you started in karate and you switched to kung fu, I guess?
Yeah, I did karate, and then I went to kung fu, and then when I did kung fu, that opened my eyes because kung fu is such an old martial art that, and how it kind of influenced every martial art pretty much out there because it's one of the oldest. So then I did Tai Chi, I did, you know, Aikido to Yang Tai Chi, and then what else did I do? I did Judo, Aikido, Xingyi. Like, so like I've tried a lot of different martial arts. Eskrima, you know, for Filipino martial arts with the Dog Brother. Like, there's a lot of different martial arts that's definitely influenced the way that I kind of feel towards martial arts.
Were you doing much like high school fights and stuff when you were a kid, or mostly in the dojos?
No, the only time I was bullied when I was younger. I was one of those kids. Like I kept my own. I actually hate conflict, but I was bullied, and then but the only time I ever got any like street fights was either a bully started it, and I think that was like junior high and like high school type. Or actually junior high, and then it definitely changed when I started being more competitive in sports, and that's the only time I ever got fights was in sports because it was just being competitive. Because like if I played basketball and somebody tried to undercut me and take my legs out, I'd be like, dude, like I need to, you know, I gotta be able to walk sooner or later. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Or playing football and you get speared, or you know, something stupid. Where it's like, you're like, dude, it's just a game.
How did you do in football? Because you look like you would have been a pretty good player.
You know what? I was actually a baseball player. That's where I was actually, my bread and butter was. And then football, I was actually pretty good at football. I was good at any sport, you know, just, I'm an athlete, and I just played a lot of sports. And one of those things, the older I got and the more, I guess, when it started affecting like politics wise, like with football or baseball, I'm not very good with politics. So like when like somebody's dad donates more money to the school and they get more starting time because dad paid more money, that didn't make any sense to me, where I was like, dude, I just want to win. Let's be competitive, you know, and that was kind of more. And then when I found wrestling, I was like, oh, it's just me. Don't have to worry about nobody else.
How old would you have been when you first saw UFC for the first time?
First time I saw the UFC, I think it was 16 or 17. And then that was like right when Tough Man was like on TV. And then like I tried to do, because I was like, oh, you know, like how do I, you know, get paid to do martial arts, you know, or like fighting or whatever. And then I saw Tough Man, and then I was like, oh, you know what, I'll enter Tough Man. And then I found out you had to be 18, and I was only 16, you know, and I was like, and then I watched the UFC, and then I'm like, oh, this is how you beat Royce, you know, like, I was like, dude, you just have to be a really good wrestler, and you could do this. And then next thing you know, that next wave of fighters, like the Kevin Randlemans, the Mark Coleman's, like the hardcore wrestlers, how they dominated, you know, the MMA circuit, you know, from UFC to Pride. And then when they outlawed headbutting, kind of changed the game for Mark Coleman, because Mark Coleman used to just take you down and beat you up with his head.
I think when they started testing for steroids, that affected him.
No, that's the one thing that it hasn't. Testing for steroids hasn't changed the game, because people just know how to cycle now. They're more chemists or pharmacists that know how to. Use the regulation. I mean, Lance Armstrong kind of helped, you know, that was like, oh, I get tested all the time, but he'd be tested all day long.
Yeah.
So
recent years, I guess. Finally.
Yeah, but it was after he was done, after he already made all his money and glory, the whole 9 yards, but he's still living like a king.
And is it true that you were actually a teacher after college?
Yeah, no. The one thing I was. Like I thought I had my life all figured out. I was going to be a teacher, and then I taught school, and then I think I was like 27, 28, and then I was just like, you know what, I'm getting old, I might as well just throw my hat in the ring and just kind of go for it, you know, and then that's what it is, and then that's where we are today.
And I also read that you were a rugby player for a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's rugby was one of those, like I said, I was just an athlete, and when I found rugby, I was like, wow, this is freaking awesome. And then it was just one of those things, like kind of like playing, like doing MMA, where it was like grabbing and dirty, but then at the end of the day, you just shook the other guy's hand and went and had a drink with him, you know. And I really liked rugby.
What position were you?
People would think I'd be like a prop, or you know, but I was definitely a flanker, or I was a back.
Wow, I really wouldn't have expected that. So you started training in jiu-jitsu, I guess, sometime during college or after college?
I started training jiu-jitsu in, I want to say in 2000.
Okay.
2000 or 99, right in there. And then that's all I did until, I think, before I even found fighting. I think my first fight was in 2004. I didn't even start boxing until or actually train MMA until my 7th fight or 8th fight. I just did jiu-jitsu, but then that's why my record, my first 6 fights are all submissions, because all I did was just know how to submit. And then once I knocked somebody out, I was like, oh, this is so much easier. Let's just stick that. You know, like the only 2 people that you'd want to kind of, I mean, besides Hickson, there's a few guys that you want to get your black belt from, but like Henzo is definitely one of those warriors. I remember watching him versus Sakuraba when Sakuraba had him in a Kimura in an arm lock, and then his elbow popped and he was still fighting, and then the ref looked at it and was like, that looks wrong, and then called the fight, but he was still trying to, you know, fight through it. So I thought that was, you know, definitely but Henzo is definitely a legend and definitely a warrior.
And what was going to the Abu Dhabis like?
Going to Abu Dhabi was definitely an experience. It was the first time I actually had to get a passport. First time actually out of the country. I'd never been to Mexico, or Canada, where it's like, oh, I could just jump over this little, it's connected.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I know, I was going to Brazil for the Abu Dhabi, because that was right after the 9/11, so we couldn't go to Abu Dhabi. So they had it in Brazil.
And how did you do?
I actually did really well. I ended up I won my first one, then my second one I lost by advantage points to, I think, Van Arsdale, and then I think Van Arsdale took third. But then literally right after that, I think Jeff Munson won that one. And then literally the next year I competed against Jeff Munson and then beat Jeff. So then I'm like, good, I just beat the Abu Dhabi champion. And I think Jeff won it 2 years in a row, 2 or 3. And because it has the Olympics every other year, every 2 years or whatever, but he won it a couple times, and I was like, well, I'm pretty good if I just beat the guy, the Abu Dhabi champion.
And what is your opinion on gi versus no gi training for MMA?
Gi and no gi. I think gi jiu-jitsu, you have to learn the fundamentals. But if you're doing MMA, it's definitely do no gi, because my thing is you have to learn the fundamentals. So I just start with gi until you get your blue belt, and then after your blue belt, you've already seen your an arm bar is, whatever naked choke is, all the standards, knee bar, ankle lock, so you've already seen all those things. So you got the basics down, and then when you do MMA training, it's different in the gi and without the gi. I mean, when I did gi, my game was the same. When I had the gi on, it was just I had the extra advantage. That's how I look at it, is because I got extra handles.
Right.
But a lot of people have different games with the gi and no gi. Mine was exactly the same, except if I grabbed instead of grabbing your wrist and you could kind of, muscle out of it or whatever, when I grabbed your sleeve, you weren't going to muscle out because I know how to grab a sleeve.
And your MMA debut, I guess, was in a tournament format. How did you like that, and why don't they do that anymore?
You know what? The first time, like I said, I never trained MMA before, and I just did straight jiu-jitsu, and I was like, you know what? Let's see if I'm even good at this. So I did a tournament because it was winner take all, $3,000, but you had to win both fights, and that was winner take all. And I was like, and it was one of my friends of a friend, he's putting on the show, but then I thought it was going to be a little bit easier, but it was everybody already had 6 fights, 7 fights, 8 fights, and I was the only guy that never had a fight in his life. So when I went in there, and after I won, I was like, I'll never do this again. It was one of those. I was like, if I was a Pride champ, I don't even know how they do it in Pride, and then I'm like, unless I'm getting paid a lot of money, but it wasn't worth. It was a good experience, but it wasn't worth $3,000.
Do you think they'll ever do that again? Those one-night fights where sometimes you can get three fights in one night to win?
I think I know the PFL, the new or former as World Series.
Yeah.
They're going to be doing. They'll do 2 fights in one night, and Bellator's done 2 fights in one night, but it's not like a true. Where it's 3 rounds, and then or how Pride was, where it's you had 1 10-minute round, and then a 5, and a 5. With those, I think it's it's just 2 rounds, and then whoever wins, and then if you don't win, then you go to the third round to get the decision, and then you continue on with your next fight. But I think it's the best way I can look at it is fighting for a championship where you have to do 5 rounds. That's the worst case scenario, is you're gonna fight 5 rounds in one night, but just 2 different people.
Yeah, because we talked to Dan Severn about it, and he really didn't enjoy those tournaments, but I guess the pay was a lot lower when he was doing it too.
Yeah, the pay was definitely, it all depends on the tournament. Like I said, I know he made more than $3,000 to fight 2 guys in one night. Yeah. So, and it wasn't winner take all.
No.
So if I would have lost, I would have walked home with it going, man, I think I broke my foot, and who's going to cover this insurance bill? You know, like, so I think it's definitely a different time when, I mean, pay's much different now than it was back then, but the exposure's a little bit different, for sure.
And you had a 6-1 record before signing with the IFL. Did any of those fights stand out to you?
Which ones?
Like any of the first 7 fights you had?
The first 7 fights, the only one that stood out before was actually the loss. That one, because technically I felt like I won the fight, but it was more, I was mentally defeated because it was in Russia, and I literally went to Russia on 2 days. I didn't like think of, you know, like, oh, there's time, like the time travel, you know, the jet lag, and because we fought in the morning time, and it was because it was for Bodog. It was so it wasn't even in front of an audience except like a bunch of, you know, Russian, you know, guys, you know, so it was like kind of like a Lionheart, you know, and there's like maybe 30 guys that you're fighting in front of. But that fight, that's where I learned about, maybe I should start training this as MMA. Like maybe I should learn how to box a little bit or so, you know. And then my next fight after that was literally, I think a month later, I fought in the IFL, because I fought in December, then I fought in January, then I won, and then I fought literally, I think 3 weeks later in February. Like that was like the year that I rattled off like 7 or 8 fights in like less than a year.
Carlos Newton recently did an interview with us, and he said he made more in the IFL than with UFC. Was the IFL contract you had pretty good?
Yeah, the IFL, I think the structure and pay actually worked really well, because like I think after I became the IFL champion, I knew they didn't have like UFC money, but instead of being, I guess, it was more, more fair, because it was like, because I mean, I even had it in my contract where my competitor could make more money than me if I was the champion.
Yeah.
Like as simple as like, if you're gonna try to bring somebody in to beat me, which is fine, I'm not gonna hate you for it, but I just need to make more just because I'm a champion. So you know, the champion clause actually makes sense.
Yeah.
Versus like how the UFC belt now doesn't really, it's more of a trophy. Like, I mean, you got a belt, he got the belt.
Yeah.
Today I had a good night, so I have the belt. Versus like, you know, that's why I like the tournament format.
Right, because anyone can become a challenger, right?
Right, because you can go back and go, it's just like, you know, like Super Bowl. Like, I mean, you can have a great season, go 16-0, make the playoffs, lose that very first game, and just, guess what, it's a rebuilding year.
Yeah. Now, Ken Shamrock, I guess, was the captain of your IFL team. Mm-hmm. What was it like being trained with him?
The one thing about Ken is a lot of things that Ken actually brought to, I guess for me, was more the dynamic of his, the way, I guess, controlling a room, or being charismatic, or how to control an interview, or like more on the, I guess, the showbiz side. Not so much the fighting side, but the showbiz side, and how he made a lot of money, you know, on just beating Ken Shamrock. With Ken, there's a couple stories, but like for the most part, like Ken, you know, he lived up in Reno. I lived here in Vegas, but for the most part, he gave a lot of good information. And excuse me, if you could, with Ken, he gave you a lot of information, and if you could, you know, like regurgitate it or actually perform it, you know, like you could actually do it, because he's seen a lot. The thing is, with Ken, it was like you had to ask the right questions to get the right information. Because, like, you know, some guys aren't, like, we'll say the best teachers in the world.
Right.
But they've like, kind of been there, done that, but you have to kind of phrase the word. And I think I lucked out because I was a teacher, so I was able to adapt by asking the questions I needed to get where I needed to go, you know, learning-wise. Because most people go, just do that. And you're like, why? Like, I'm more the why is that? Like, why are we doing that? You know, type thing versus just being a robot and just doing. Because if I don't know why, then it doesn't do any purpose like afterwards.
Did you have the opportunity to spar with him at all?
Ken, no, because back then Ken was actually stopped fighting for, you know, he was like, I'm done doing this. Well, he's like, if I had to come out of retirement, I'll fight. I think who was he? Oh, he wanted to fight his brother. He wanted to fight Frank. So that was his like thing. And then I think his last fight was actually Hoyce.
Yeah.
And that was last year or the year before.
Yeah, and he was supposed to fight Severn after, but I guess he had a suspension or something. So
Yeah, because of the juice.
And I got to ask you about Shamrock against Kimbo, the controversy there. What do you think happened there? Do you think it was legitimate and just it looked a little odd?
What would be the controversy? That they're both gassed?
Yeah, there's so many people. I'm not one of them. I believe it was a legitimate fight, but there's some people.
Oh no, King got knocked out. I mean, you can't fake that tired.
Yeah, they just weren't.
They were just wearing. They were. I mean, I think Ken was in his 50s.
Yeah.
I mean, the only guy that I know that was even close to being that old and that was always in shape was Randy. And I think when he fought Pachita, that was 49 or 47 or something like that. And then, but usually after 50, it's like you're like, I'm living. You know, like boxing. Bernard Hopkins is the only one that I would be like, no, I stayed in shape all the time. You know, like, but usually when you're out of MMA for a minute, you kind of tend to go into the showbiz side and you stay out of shape.
Yeah. And what do you think the downfall of the IFL was?
Downfall of IFL was, I think it was real simple. It was just overspending. I mean, I remember when they had vacation houses in like the Hamptons and like, I think they even had like offices in New York. But all the operations offices were here in Vegas. So everything was operating out of this one office in Vegas, but they had offices in New York, so they could say, I got an office in New York. They got, a house in the Hamptons. I think there was just a lot of wasteful spending versus actually, but it could have done it. That's why I think the PFL this year will do really well with the kind of the $1 million prize, so it'd be like bringing back Pride, and it's like Pride and the IFL kind of had a baby.
Yeah. Did you like the team concept of the IFL?
I did, but it needed to be more of a traditional team, like where it made more sense. Like if I knocked somebody out, I got 3 points for the team. If I submitted somebody, 3 points. If I got a decision, maybe 1. And if it was a draw, 0. And if I lost, then -1. Something where the bookies could play some games with. Like make some. But it was like, because it was a 5-man team, and if you won the first 3, why are we even fighting the other 2?
Yeah.
Type thing. It's like you can't come back and win because there's no way. You won the first 3. It's like you don't do baseball and go, well, we're going to do the bottom of the 9th. I know it's already 13-0. We're not going to do the bottom 9th. We already know that. Like, I'm not going to put more points on the board to, beat you. So I think if they had kind of like if it was like a more kind of like a wrestling type thing where it showed more points. Like the reason why we're doing this is because they kind of adapted that a little bit later where they're like, well, if you win, then it helps you in the playoffs for your own personal bracket where you could be, where you're going to get seeded and stuff like that. And like, because you got points for the tournament. You know what I mean? But it wasn't for the team. So, because they had the team side and then they had the personal side.
And shortly after it went out of business, you fought Andrei Arlovsky in Elite FC, or Elite XC, I should say. You only had 10 days notice for that fight. What are your memories of that fight?
I think my biggest memory with that fight was it was on short notice. That's when I got a change management group a little bit, and then everybody said it was short notice. But then after the fight, I had a conversation with Arlovsky,
And he's like, no, he knew about the fight for weeks. I mean, he's been training for me for like, I think a full camp, like 8 weeks. So that's when I first learned about politics in the MMA game, where money makes, you know, where if he was number 2 in the world and they had to make sure he won, so he already was set up to, you're gonna probably fight Roy, blah, blah, blah. And hey, Roy, you wanna fight? Oh, sure, whatever. Like that's when I'm like, oh, so I am getting screwed. Like, you know, it's one of those things, but you know, I go out there and put on a show as much as you possibly can, and then, hey, but I learn from it.
What do you think about him as a fighter? He's had a pretty good career.
I think Arlovsky, you know, he's been a world champion a couple times. He beat, you know, like nobody talks about Tim Sylvia, but you know, he beat Tim. He's, you know, he's beat some tough guys, and then he's lost some. You know, he's fought, you know, the best of the world. That was just like one of those fights that I wish I had a full camp. You know, like there's a couple fights where I'm like, I always wish I had a full camp. But you know, like I'm that old school fighter. Like, hey, you want to fight? Sure, because that's how I make money.
Yeah. And you fought in Roy Jones Jr.'s promotion versus Jeff Munson, and it was a controversial loss. The commentators, I guess, said you won, and the media said you won. What was the whole controversy there?
Jeff even said I won.
Yeah.
Like, I think the biggest controversy, I think, was because it was Florida. Jeff was from Florida, but yeah, like literally, I mean, the funniest story about the whole thing is a week later, Jeff called me up and said, "Hey, will you corner me? I want to fight. I'm going to fight in Japan in I think it was another Japanese promotion that was in Sokoju, I think it was Soko or." And he wanted me to corner him, so I said, sure. I already know I beat you, and then he wanted me to corner him, and then I went to Japan, and then I cornered him, and we beat Sergey Karnatanov, and you know, I was like, and they're like, I can't believe you did that. I'm like, like I can't change how the judges scored it, but he knows, and I know who the better fighter is.
Yeah. Now, right after that, you had the Ultimate Fighter heavyweights opportunity. I guess they approached you to be on the show.
Yeah, no, I was actually I was in talks with Scott Coker at the time, and then with Roy Jones, they didn't. They were supposed to fight me, and they didn't. So then the opportunity of the Ultimate Fighter came in, and I was like, you know, because I know I've been around the UFC a lot, and with all the UFC fighters, I've known Dana, I know Lorenzo. All of them before they even bought the UFC. So like, and it was just one of those things that I always tried to stay away from. But then they were snatching up all the different, you know, like Pride and all the businesses. And I was like, you know, let's go there, and we'll use the Ultimate Fighter as a PR opportunity. And because at the time they didn't fire any Ultimate Fighters.
Right.
That was kind of like the unsaid, you know, thing. If you won the Ultimate Fighter, they didn't fire you. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to give myself a little longevity. They're going to invest some money. So once they invest some money, then they'll try to promote me a little bit more, you know, like that type of thing. So I used it as a PR opportunity. Went in there, went the Ultimate Fighter, won it, and then the rest, you know, I've stayed in the UFC for almost 10 years, and then now I'm over Bellator.
What was the hardest part of living in that Ultimate Fighter house?
Hardest part was actually being, I think, 1.5 miles from my actual house.
Right.
That was the hardest part. It's like I knew exactly where we were at. And I'm like, it's 1 mile, because most people didn't live in Vegas.
Yeah.
I'm like, my house is right there. Let me just, how about I just go home for the day, I come back and I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it was just because you have no internet, no TV, you're just cut off from the world. And you just got to hang out with a bunch of guys, and it's a bunch of guys that you're like, I don't really like you.
And you were much more known as a fighter, I think, other than Kimbo, but he didn't have as legitimate skills as you.
Yeah, but see, for me, when I went into Ultimate Fighter, I already knew I was going to win, just off the pure fact that my thinking was like for the PR wise, but it was also no real fighter like that's a high level as me would ever enter the UFC at that crap pay.
Yeah.
So I already knew like it either had to be a diamond in the rough,
or there was no guy to beat me out there. Like the only person at the time I was like, who's really good that they would be able to get me would be like a Fedor, like that would give me some competition. Fedor, Arlovsky, and then like, because I think Verdum already got, and then like Verdum was with Strikeforce, but I think it was like the only person that was out there was Arlovsky. And I was like, okay, but I know Arlovsky makes $800,000, $900,000 per fight. He wouldn't go to the Ultimate Fighter to make crap money.
Right.
So like, that's how I knew, like, going to Ultimate Fighter, like they would have to be either a diamond or rough. And if I got beat, then I got beat by somebody that, you know, definitely deserves it to be there.
And I guess your fight with Kimbo Slice had the all-time ratings record for MMA history in the U.S., which I guess was a 3.7 rating, 6 million homes. How did you feel about that when you heard about that?
You know what? I figured it takes two to make a good fight, and I knew, like, because everybody wanted to fight Kimbo in the house. They're like, dude, I want to fight Kimbo. I want to fight Kimbo. I'm like, I don't want to fight Kimbo at all. And they're like, you're crazy. And I'm like, no, it's not. I just don't want to fight Kimbo. And they're like, why? Because if I fight Kimbo, I want to get paid. Like,
right.
I forgot. You guys forget that we're prize fighters. Like, we're supposed to be fighting for money, and like that for being an all-time high, the #1 show, like the whole 9 years. It's like that should have set me up for the rest of my life for retirement, but it didn't. I think I made $5,000.
What was he like in the house? Was he a nice guy?
Kimbo was definitely one of those. He was definitely a nice guy, but he was a respect guy. So he was one of those things. If you respected him, he was respectful to you. But if he didn't respect you, like I'd watch out. And I call it like the respect of the streets. Like if he thought you were a piece of shit, he would let you know that you were a piece of shit.
Right. So how long was your contract for after winning the Ultimate Fighter?
The contract with the Ultimate Fighter, I think how they, I think it's been out there. I think it's supposed to be a six-figure deal, but it's over 3 years. Okay. And that's where everybody, like they think it's, you're gonna make $1 million, but it's like, no, it's 6 figures over 3 years. Like, do the math,
Yeah.
You're like, no, I could probably make more if I was a full-time construction worker.
I guess at that time you could get sponsors still in the UFC.
Yeah, no. When I did the Ultimate Fighter, I actually made more from sponsorship than I did from fighting, and that just because of who I was, and like that was the one thing of that. If you could do that, it was the way I looked at it was my sponsorship money was my 401k.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, a lot of fighters don't look at it that way. They're like, I'm gonna spend it next week.
And I guess your first fight after the Ultimate Fighter, you knocked out the guy in 39 seconds. I guess you're happy with that.
Yeah, no. Stefan Struve was one of the Stefan Struve still fights for the UFC. So it's Stefan Struve is just a big man. I mean, he's a 7 foot, and he's like a legit 7 foot. He's not like a basketball where he's a 7 foot 2 inch. You're like, he's really 6'10".
I saw your training video for that fight.
Yeah, where put someone on some still or on the chair to try to hit it. No, the one thing about MMA is you got to definitely have a good time with it.
You fought Junior Dos Santos after that. What are your thoughts on that fight?
With Junior, it was one of those fights. Like, it was definitely prepared. I think prepared him to knock out Cain Velasquez. It was one of those fights that I think I pushed him to the limit, and then he was like, "Oh, wow, this guy over here, he's supposed to be the fat guy." Like, and he just took me the distance. I've knocked everybody out ever since then. So for me, I think it was that was a learning lesson for me, where I'm like, oh, maybe I should really start training. Training, because I would still just do jiu-jitsu and just go to boxing classes. Like, I didn't train as a fighter, like how I do today.
Now, you mentioned that, like he said, you may have been, some people may have said you're a fat guy, your cardio might not be good, or things like that. But you do have pretty good stamina. Is it just that you eat a lot, or you have a slow metabolism?
I don't know. I think a lot of people don't really. I think TV ads or video ads, you know, like TV ads supposed to add 30 pounds, HD adds another 60. Like it's. I think people are always looking at the wrong thing. Like nobody looks at my legs. Like I got legs. I got my muscles on my legs. I'll put that up against any bodybuilder. Like so I hold all my weight in my legs. And then just I think it's just genetics. I mean, there's a lot of things. I could be like, it's also the GMOs, or it's the gluten. I mean, it's one of those things. I really don't care. I don't try to. If someone paid me to diet, I'd probably do it. But I don't get paid to diet. I get paid to punch someone in the face. As long as I'm under 265, that's all that matters. Yeah. And that's how I've always fought.
At one point, you actually did slim down to a really lighter weight. Was that because you were thinking of going light heavyweight, or was that?
No, the reason why I went down was it was kind of a bet. Then it was also kind of like the UFC kind of wanted it, so I tried. So I think it was like it was actually my Crow Cop fight. I dropped, I want to say like 10 pounds. Like that sounds like not really a lot for a heavyweight, but I dropped 10 pounds and everybody's like, oh my gosh, wow. I'm like, yeah, that's 254 and 205 still down here.
Yeah.
And then I think I even got a little bit lower because all I did was concentrate on dieting when I fought for Doom. The next one, I think I got down to 246. But like when I first started, I think I fought at 246. And then all of a sudden I got man muscle.
Yeah.
And then man muscle changes the whole, the whole dynamic of how you train and fight.
I forget which weight it was, but where you wore the fat suit.
That was Crow Cop.
Yeah, that was hilarious. Was that something you came up with, or was that?
Yeah, no, that was me because everybody wanted to see, my new look, how I died, like it was like kind of like I was doing porn, like people wanted to pay for a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
They want to see how I look. They don't care about how I fight. And I was like the Kim Kardashian of the UFC. If people care more about how I look than how I fight, then I know I'm moving some fans.
And I think a lot of people take screenshots of you at exact moments when you're breathing heavy and post those pictures around just to be assholes.
No, you know what it is? It's love or hate. But the thing is I give hope to the average day guy, and that the thing is because I'm the average day guy. I just put my nose to the grindstone and I just work, and that's where a lot of people, I think, today's been lost. Is everybody's got their participation awards instead of just putting their work in.
Yeah. Now, to develop your chin, is that just a natural ability you have to take punches, or is there any training you do specifically?
I think for my chin, I think a lot of people just I got bit by a radioactive spider and just got superpowers. I think that's all it is.
Now, Shane Carwin pulled out of your UFC 125 fight, and that fight was canceled. I was wondering, do you get any pay at all when that situation happens?
Oh, when he got pulled out, I got Matt Mitrione. I fought Matt Mitrione. They just replaced Matt, because I think that's when I did VADA, where I started doing drug testing myself. That's before USADA came in, okay. Where I did like, hey, you want to take we're gonna go get tested. Do you want to be part of it? And then he was like, oh no, I'm out of here. So then I think that's when he retired. Okay. So I forced him into retirement. That's why I look at it.
And you had a fight with Frank Mir at UFC 130. That was a pretty interesting fight. What are your thoughts on Frank Mir?
You know what? That was actually the fight that my wife didn't want me to take because that was like when I found out that I actually had walking pneumonia, and I shouldn't even actually took the fight, but I think the card was falling apart, and then I was like, dude, I just fight, like whatever. Like I can still get paid the same, like. The UFC is supposed to take care of me. Like, they've always said they're gonna take care of me. And then when I did that and I found out that they didn't take care of me, I was like, it kind of changes some, my attitude towards the fight game a little bit. but it was one of those, you know, definitely I wish I had it back, but you know, it was definitely a learning lesson. Just if you're really injured or sick, just don't take the fight.
Do you get along with Mir outside of fight days since you're both from this town? I guess you must run.
Yeah, I have no, like, I mean, I don't have any preference towards Frank, just because, you know, Frank's Frank. You know, like the juice thing, I think when he got popped for the juice, and like there's, you know, I think just owning it and just saying, yeah, I'm a juice mongler, like just the way I look at it is just always own it. Don't, you know, if you got caught, you got caught, and everybody else knows, you know, like just besides the USADA, like in town.
And what are your predictions for Mir versus Fedor?
I really don't know. You know what? I'm a big Fedor fan. I hope Fedor wins, but I'm not fighting him, so I really don't like. I'm just a big Fedor fan, so I just hope Fedor wins. But if Frank wins, then you know, cool. But I think Fedor, you know, he's been doing, you know. I think he got, you know, kind of got hit up when Matt hit him, but I think it was one of those. It was a double knockout, and it was whoever got up faster. But I think. You know, Fedor's not the same Fedor, but it's one of those, Fedor's definitely one of those idols as a heavyweight.
There are people now that bring up, because it's come out that some Pride fights have been fixed and some Japanese fights have been fixed, that maybe Fedor maybe have had some fights fixed in Japan. Maybe that's why he hasn't done as good in the States. Do you think there's any truth to that, or is it just he's older now?
There could be truth to it. I mean, the thing is, I don't know anything about but the one thing about Japanese MMA back in the time with Pride is they knew how to entertain the public.
Yeah.
I mean, when you could fill the Tokyo arena with 40,000 fans, that, you know, that tells you something. When that's just one, like a country that's only, I think, might have 5 million people, you know what I mean? If you can do 40 million fans, and then you got the US with over 300 million, and you have a hard time with, you know, doing 15,000, you know what I mean? It just kind of changes the whole dynamic of MMA.
And what are your memories of your Fabricio Verdun fight, which won fight of the night, but unfortunately you got the decision?
I think the biggest thing was, that I learned from the Fabricio fight was how to block a knee. I think that I got that afterwards, but it's like, because before I used to swing through, when someone would clinch me, and I would try to throw my punches, but it was like, now it's block and then throw punches. Because I was throwing it while I was getting hit, and then once I got it cut, all I had to do was jab, and that thing just, all I could do is just feel the glove and the sweat between my, you know, the hole in my face.
You knocked out Dave Henderson, or Dave Herman after that, sorry, in 51 seconds. Any thoughts on that fight?
When I fought Dave Herman, I was actually supposed to fight him back with the Elite XC, and I thought that would be an interesting fight, but actually I was actually upset because I was actually supposed to fight Bigfoot for that fight, and then they bumped, when I wasn't gonna fight Bigfoot, they bumped him to go fight Cain Velasquez. I think that was for the #1 contendership for the belt.
Right.
And so I was like, God, this is bull. You know, so like it was one of those things. Like I'm like, oh, it's like the taste of the belt was, you know, right there, and then I got kind of bumped down a little bit, and then, but you know, that's one of those fights. Just went out there, and just, you know, had fun, and it was a good night.
Yeah, at least you got the knockout of the night bonus.
That helps, because you know, you make more money from the knockout of the night bonus than the actual fight.
Yeah. How did you like being a coach on The Ultimate Fighter?
Which time? I've been on there a couple times.
Well, I guess start with the first time.
First time, it was definitely different than, I'd rather be a contestant than actually, like you'd think it would be the other way around, you'd rather be a coach than a contestant. But being a contestant, it was a simple, like it was one goal, it was for me to win, and then that's it. And then as a contestant, you got so many different personalities to deal with, and none of them want to listen, because there are either kids or, you know, like, some either get it, some don't, you know, like, but it was one of those things that you just break it down and you're like, it's a tournament. You know, like the best person's gonna win, and then like I had like one or two my favorites, and then I try to help them, you know, through the whole thing. Like, okay, this is what's gonna happen. That's why we're gonna have you fight now. You know, like, but I mean, I remember having a conversation saying that you guys all suck because of like you guys all. I don't want to say you guys all suck. You guys all have the fair, like, what side team, it doesn't matter what team, you guys all have the fair advantage because there's not one guy that sticks out like a sore thumb that goes, man, he's gonna win. Like, it wasn't like that. Like when I did Ultimate Fighter, that's how I felt. Like, I was like, dude, this is simple. I already know I'm gonna win. I like all the way through, like, there was nobody that I was like, oh, he can beat me, or oh, he's gonna be really good at wrestling, so I gotta look out for that. You know, like, it wasn't like that. But those guys, so it was definitely hard because you're trying to deal with a lot of different personalities. And then the second time, it was a fight. It was actually, I don't want to say it was Ultimate Fighter Japan, but it was Ultimate Fighter but it was for Japan, and it was just hard to do. I liked it, but the only hard thing was the speech, because they were Japanese, and so you had to have to go through an interpreter. But just going through the different motions, you could see that they actually got it a little bit. You know what I mean? Because Japanese fighters have way more respect. They respect you. It's kind of like, let's break it down to like the Kimbo. They respect you, then they're going to listen, and then if they didn't respect you, then maybe what's going on?
Yeah. Now, your Matt Dittrione first fight, I think that was after the first Ultimate Fighter coach?
That was where he took in for Shane Carwin.
Yeah. That was a TKO victory for you. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, no, I just went out there. I think he kicked me, and then I just got mad, and I just went out and just tried to take his head off, and then that was the fight.
He was trying to claim after that some of your tactics weren't there.
That was my second fight.
Oh, that was this last one?
The last fight. The last fight, Matt, I think it was because he felt he lost in his heart, so he needed to feel good about whatever. So I really don't know, because before, I mean, he was a diva the week going to the fight. He talked about, you know, cheating on his wife. That's the reason why he lost the first one. Like, I mean, there was a whole bunch of, like, I was like, where's all this coming from? Because I used to help Matt all the time. Matt would call me up and be like, hey, how should you fight this guy? And I tell him, like, hey, you should fight him this way. Like, thought I was more of a mentor to him, and then the way he did me dirty, I was just like, whatever. You know, Matt's going to be Matt, and I think that's why he doesn't have a lot of friends.
Was that disappointing to you? Because a lot of people did believe you should have won that second fight.
It's definitely disappointing that I'm not in the tournament, but it actually, the way I look at it, it's a plus, because I'm actually I got a quick turnaround. I make money when I fight, so I'm fighting twice instead of like fighting maybe in October, November. Now I can fight at the end of May, on May 25th, and then also fight in October. So I'm going to get 3 fights. So I'm going to make more money. You know, like, so the way I look at it, this is a plus. Like, while a lot of other fighters look at it as negative. And then plus, my fight with Crow Cop is the alternate spot. So if somebody gets hurt, then I get to fill in right again. So maybe, you know, if hypothetically someone gets hurt, I might fight Matt again. And then we'll just do round 4.
You already knocked out Crow Cop once, right, in your first fight?
Yeah, it was a TKO with I knocked out or TKO'd Crow Cop in the 3rd round, I think it was. It was just, you know, just kept the pressure on, and you know, it was one of those things. I think it definitely helped the UFC, you know, and definitely helped my brand, because you know, I was the first guy to, you know, like, especially the way I look, to beat, you know, Crow Cop.
Are you fairly confident going into the second fight?
Second fight, I feel like it's, you know, it's a heavyweight fight, so anybody could win, because I thought I was gonna, you know, beat Matt, and I mean, I felt like I beat Matt, but I was a little bit slow starter with Matt the last time, because I owned him in the 3rd round for sure. So that's why I said, you know, we'll go round 4. But like as a Crow Cup, anybody can get knocked out. I could knock him out, he could knock me out, but I really want to fight Matt again. Just to go, hey, we're gonna do round 4, let's do this.
And I'm sure you actually want to probably fight FIgher too, since you were mentioning you're a fan.
Yeah, no, if I could fight FIgher, that'd be awesome. I mean, I am hoping, you know, FIgher, you know, beats Frank, and then he stays, you know, with Bellator, and then eventually I get to fight him down the, you know, somewhere down the line.
What are your thoughts on Bobby Lashley, who was with Bellator and recently went back to wrestling?
You know what? I love Bobby. You know, Bobby we actually fought on my first time I ever met Bobby was on the Roy Jones Jr. card. He fought I think Clay Guida's brother, and that's when he just a guy that's just freaking huge. I mean, just like, you know, like I was just like, wow, he's a big guy, and then he knows how to wrestle. So that was one of those things. And then, you know, I was like. And then when he was in Bellator, I was like, maybe you know, like it would be good to fight Bobby, but then it's like, you know, like I think Bobby makes more money wrestling.
Yeah, why do you think he never got really a big name opponent fight in his MMA career? Because his record wasn't bad at all.
I think it was Bobby. I just think Bobby didn't have the heart in MMA, because wrestling you already know who's going to win, so it's a lot easier to sell that one than going, this might hurt, versus this might hurt, but I already know I'm supposed to win.
Yeah.
So you kind of go through a little bit more.
Now King Mo, I think he's still in the heavyweight tournament, isn't he? And
King Mo, yeah.
What are your thoughts on King Mo?
You know what, King Mo's. I just talked to King. I just talked to Mo the other day. You know, I think, you know, he's feeling good. I think he'll definitely surprise Ryan. But I'm hoping, you know, Mo does really well. I'm hoping that, you know, he beats Ryan, and then just for the pure fact that it should be for the light heavyweight championship, because, you know, Ryan has it right now, Mo's a light heavyweight, and then hopefully after he beats him, they'll redo it and fight it right away for the belt, because it's like, I just beat you, now I have to beat you again.
And you had a fight with Daniel Cormier in UFC that he won via unanimous decision, but he's been pretty successful in his career. Any thoughts on that fight and about him?
Yeah, no, DC's definitely a guy that DC is a guy that you know, he goes out there and he performs. Like I mean, he was a great heavyweight, and you know, it was one of those things that he couldn't keep me down on my back. Once he took me down, I think one of those was definitely I grew as a fighter, because it was definitely instead of being a mental midget, you know, kind of like he put me in a mental midget spot where I'm like, oh, I don't know why he let me do, you know, like he beat me more on the mental side, and but then when I got to the 3rd round, I was like, okay, I figured him out, you know, let's do this, let's do that, and then just ran out of time.
Now you had a performance tonight versus Antonio, I'm sorry to pronounce this, if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but...
Just say Big Nog.
Big Nog, okay. I didn't see that fight, but I read the...
You should have watched that one. That's actually a great... my fight with Big Nog actually made ESPN's like top 10 list for like plays of the week. So that fight was actually like one of my, because you know, Big Nog is definitely a legend, and to put that up on my you know, kind of like my panel of going, I beat that guy, you know, is definitely good, because you know, he beat some great people, and just to be able to like, oh, I beat that guy, just like oh, I beat Crow Cop, like those are the guys of heavyweights, you know, during my time, that you wanted to beat. It's like if I was a boxer, I'm like, oh, I beat Mike Tyson or Lennox Lewis, you know, you're like, dude, you're the man.
Yeah. Well, I will definitely be looking that one up. You had your first KO loss ever to Mark Hunt. Any thoughts on that fight?
You know what? That fight was. What's the best way I can describe that fight? Is I got overzealous, and then I wasn't worried about anything, and then like I hit something that I shouldn't have been hit with. It's like he just got me that day, and I'm like, if we would have fought again, I'd beat you, 9 out of 10 times. You got that one, but no, I know, like man, heavyweights can hit hard.
What did you think of his fight with Brock Lesnar?
I think that fight was definitely, I think Brock was just scared of getting punched, so he had to take him down. It's like one of those fights that Brock, but the one thing with Mark Hunt and Brock Lesnar, it was one of those fights that, you could definitely see that Brock did not like getting punched, but Brock has his long arm, so he can get a double leg just by going like this, because you're already there. But it was definitely an interesting fight, and then after, when he got popped for steroids, that made it more, or popped for something, and then it definitely makes it interesting, because especially everybody knows that Brock's on something, especially like it's just one of those things, but nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah, what do you think that apparently Dana White said that he is coming back to the UFC now once the suspension ends?
I think him coming back to the UFC is good for the UFC. I mean, it's not like Brock like totally sucked. It wasn't that. It's just Brock gets picked for the fights that should be good. There are good fights for him.
Right.
To it, because I mean, I think he has like a 4-3 record. So it's not like he has he's like, oh, I fought 20 times and and I fought these guys. I mean, he definitely, but he won the fights that he needed to win to become the UFC champion. And then, but like I said, the UFC champion doesn't mean anything, because all it is an award that one night. It's not like he went through a tournament to get there, or had to fight 4 guys, because he was supposed to fight I think Junior Dos Santos, and then he pulled out of that fight, and because they're like, oh, he might hit hard. And then that kind of changed the aspect, and then I think, who did he beat? Oh, he beat Randy. That's how he got the belt.
And Overeem beat him. I think, didn't Dos Santos beat him? Because he was knocked out twice.
I think so, but it was like he fought Randy to become the champion.
Yes, yeah.
And Randy was 44 or 45 or something, something that and to lose a belt to a guy that fights at light heavyweight, when you're a guy that cuts down to 260, and Randy always had trouble with wrestlers that were over 250 pounds. So like it was like one of those, like, I don't want to say set up fight, but it was definitely make sure that Brock looked good.
Obviously, they're probably going to give Brock another fight that's reasonable for him.
No, I think if anything, Brock will get whoever. It'd be a title fight, but then it's like, but they don't care who wins or loses, because it's good for. If Brock wins, then it's like, woo, it's good for Brock. But if Brock loses, it's good for whoever they're fighting. Like if it's DC or Stipe, or because all it is go. Wow, just because more eyeballs, because Brock brings eyeballs because of professional wrestling. Like,
so you think they're actually going to give him a title fight?
Yeah, I could see him not even fighting nobody. He comes off a steroid, issue, and then go right into a title fight. Well, he won his last fight. No, he didn't. He lost because he got popped.
Technically lost his last 3 fights, but as you said, I guess it doesn't.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
What do you think his chances would be of winning a title fight? Being out of the game?
I don't think it really makes a difference, because whoever he fights, he'll have enough time. Like, I mean, he'll have like 6 months or 5 months, but the guy that he knows that he's fighting probably won't know about it until,
Right, because Mark Hunt, I believe, only had 5 weeks to prepare.
Yeah, but he probably already knew about it, 6 or 7 weeks before, or before that, you know, like 10 weeks, 20 weeks.
Yeah, because that would have been a long contract negotiation, I'm sure, with Lesnar. I guess he's now for pro wrestling he's making over $600,000 a match. So for MMA, it's got to be more than that. Didn't he make 10 million or something?
It's hard to tell with the pay-per-view. So like, but like with the one thing about making that much money with professional wrestling is you can do it on Monday, and guess what? I can do another Monday Night Raw, and then there's 4 Mondays in a month. So it's like you can definitely make your money, and you don't have to work and then you already know the outcome. So you're like, what I gotta? I mean, it's like you got to do a lot of physical work. So you're a professional stuntman, but it's not. You don't have to worry. You don't have to do a camp.
Is that something that you would consider once you retire from MMA? Because you kind of have a pro wrestler look to you.
Yeah, no, the one thing about pro wrestling is it's always, you know, I've always been astonished by, you know, like professional wrestling. You know, I was always like that, you know, I grew up with WCW, with NWO, you know, like that's when like you were like, oh, Hulk Hogan, he moved over, he became the bad guy, you know, like, so like you definitely got, you know, like I think the other day there was an Andre the Giant on HBO, you know, the special about like how the passing of the torch from Hulk Hogan from Andre the Giant, you know, like there's a lot of deep, you know, seated roots in that's in professional wrestling that's also in MMA, because I think the UFC stole the model from professional wrestling.
Yeah, and they're doing it actually better now as far as entertainment value overall, I find.
Because you don't know the outcome.
Right.
Like where we'll say in professional wrestling, you kind of already know kind of the outcome. If like, oh, this guy's really, you know, really hot, he's gonna keep winning. You know, like it's like I remember when Goldberg was like undefeated when he's on the 67th match. Oh, he's undefeated. He'd do another spear. You know what I mean? And then you're just like, but then where the shock one, you're like, oh no, he's fighting a good guy. You know, and then he loses. You're like, oh, but if you knew he was fighting a stiff, you know, or then you're like, he's not gonna lose. But in MMA, if he's fighting and it's a championship fight, you're like, no, that other guy's pretty good too. So you don't know what's gonna happen. So you have to watch.
Is there any pro wrestlers that you liked growing up?
You know, I like Big Van Vader.
We actually interviewed Vader, and I'll ask you about this. He said that he could beat Chael Sonnen in a fight. What do you think about that?
You know what? I think he'd probably beat him in a fight, but I don't know if I'd like to see the more verbal combat. Let's see like who could win that one.
Actually, Chael said, I guess he saw the clip that we posted of Vader talking about him, and he said he wasn't even gonna do a comeback to it.
That's funny. No, but like Big Van Vader. I mean, everybody loved Hulk Hogan. You know, there's just so many different guys. But then you see the fall from, you know, like where you're looking and you're like, okay, like, you know, Macho Man, you know, like Scott Hall, you know, you're like all these icons, and then when you see after, you're like, man, the effect that, you know, when you're like, man, it's just like MMA, like how hard it is on the body, you know, the whole 9 yards. It's like,
there might be more partying in wrestling though too that I think affects those wrestlers a lot.
I think I want to say it's that, but it's also, I think bumps hurt.
Yeah, that's also true.
So that's the thing is like a lot of people don't get that's why I said it's like being a professional stuntman and going, I'm gonna jump off this building today, I'm gonna keep jumping off this building, and then eventually the bag wasn't there set up right or something stupid, and you're like, oh, that landed on that wrong. It's like having a bad day of practice with sparring, and then you're like, man, I shouldn't have done that.
Now, speaking of fighters that are also pro wrestlers, you had that fight against Josh Barnett. Any thoughts on that fight?
Yeah, no, Josh was in Japan. It was actually a great fight. it was definitely a close fight. I think he won 3 rounds, I won 2. I think one round I wished, I think if I would have got, I was just kind of just there living in the moment. Because I think there's one time I almost knocked him out with a head kick, like, and if I would have won with a head kick, that would have been freaking awesome, because I've never won with a head kick. It was one of those. But Josh is definitely, you know, a guy that definitely pushed me to be a better fighter.
I would like to see you win with a head kick too. Is there any tips that you have for heavyweight, for flexibility training?
I think with heavyweights, I think the biggest thing is just doing it. Just like going out there and stretching, and like same thing, like lifting weights while stretching, if that makes any sense. Like if you're gonna squat, use the you know, the barbell to kind of squat down a little bit lower to get the, you know, your hamstrings a little loose, and then, you know, explode up, and it definitely will loosen you up a little bit.
So you had a very respectable record finishing out your UFC contract. Is there any other fights you wanted to bring up while we get off the topic of your MMA career in UFC?
No, I think you know, I can't wait until, you know, March 25th, or sorry, the one thing I can't wait for is, you know, May 25th with Crow Cop, and it's Bellator 200, so it's like, you know, it's a big event. Especially, I've never fought in London, and now I get to fight in London.
What was it like switching to Bellator after 8 years in the UFC?
You know what? There really wasn't a big difference. I mean, I'm a professional, you know, mixed martial artist, and it's the same thing. I think the only biggest difference is Bellator definitely fights for or plays to the TV versus crowds, because there's a little bit different. But it also like the UFC. It depends on a UFC event. If you're on a pay-per-view, you're playing for the crowd. But if you're on a UFC like fight night, you're playing for the TV. I think the only thing I had to get used to is that I'm still trying to get used to is just their TV time about warming up properly.
Okay.
Because like sometimes there's, you know, you warm up too soon, and they're like, no, we still got to play this commercial, and you're like I'm ready to fight now, and they're like, no, it's gonna be another 30 minutes, you know, and then you warm up like 4 or 5 times, and then when you actually go out there cold, you become a slow starter.
And you were recently in a movie with my kickboxing instructor, Alain Moussi, the Kickboxer Retaliation film, and I was just wondering how that experience was for you, and what your opinion is on Alain.
No, the one thing about Alain is he is like a phenomenal athlete. Like, I mean, he can do flips, he can do, you know, like he's the reason why I get into karate, you know, like he be able to kick in a circle, you know, that guy where you're like, doo, 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 you know, with the music, but he's definitely, you know, phenomenal when it comes to, you know, like especially stunts. Like there's this one stunt that I watched him do. It was like literally, I think he fought like 8 guys, but it was like a whole scene from one room to a hallway, back to another room, a hallway, like a gym flip, like but it was all cut in one scene, versus like, okay, we're gonna do this scene, snap, cut, okay, now different camera angle, cut, and then they, you know, put it all together. It was all in one scene, and I was very impressed by that.
Did you have any contact with Mike Tyson while you were on that set?
Yeah, no, I actually talked to Mike. I've been to Mike's house. Mike's definitely a different bird, but the one thing about is it's kind of goes back to like the Kimbo thing. It's like a respect thing, and he respects me as a fighter. So we have different talks, which is definitely where I've seen him not talk to anybody. But when you can get him to talk, and him talk about fighting or just talking about life, it's out there, but it's like, you're like, wow, because you know he's seen it and done it, one way or another.
I read his book. It was pretty impressive, everything that he's done.
Yeah, you're just, because you're in awe of like, you did what? Yeah, what? How'd you, you know, like, oh yeah, you got to do this, you got to do that. I mean, we had to talk about like commissions and about like, you know, they control your destiny, so make sure you know, we was talking about politics and like, you know, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, and he was definitely interesting to have a good conversation with Mike.
Did he give you any like specific fighting advice that you used?
Not actually like fighting for like UFC or Bellator. I think it was more the aspect of just life in general, like more taking in, little nuggets of information and going, okay, learn that, okay, don't do that, okay, and just to be overall just a better person.
Now, some people have described you as Tank Abbott with stamina, and I'm wondering what you think about that comparison. What you think of Tank?
Tank was one of those guys that fans loved. And people still talk about Tank today. So to be in that same category as Tank is, I think it's great. I always joked around and said I'm Tank Abbott with fighting skills. That's how I looked at it. But more that I've gotten to learn about Tank is Tank knew how to fight. Just he just had a couple other demons.
And what are your thoughts on CM Punk now getting a second UFC match, I guess, against a fighter that's 0-1?
Well, I think CM Punk
He's also
to it. So I think it just shows you where the UFC is at when it's about entertainment. It's not about like everybody thinks if you're in the UFC that's like the NFL. Like you made it the big time. You're not. You're 0-1. So it's like going to a boxing event where there's a guy that's having their pro debut. I mean, Matt Mitrione had his pro debut in the UFC. Like, so it's not like there's nothing special about the UFC except they just know how to brand, and they're just all over the place. But the thing is, cream always rises to the top. The one thing I always said about like with the UFC, if you could be in the UFC for more than 3 years, then actually probably 2 years. But you have to fight. The key is you have to fight. There's some guys that, I'm injured, my toe hurts, but I'm a UFC fighter. So.
Were you surprised at how poorly CM Punk did in his first fight, considering that he was training with some of the best trainers for 2 years prior?
He also fought a guy that wasn't, like the best of the best, but, I think it was Mickey Gall, right? Yeah. Mickey, I think, won a couple fights after that. I think he beat, was it Sage? Yeah. He beat a couple good guys, or guys at the UFC, pointed as like, these are phenomenal, guys. So Mickey's not, not a slouch. And it's not like, it was like, oh my gosh, he got beat, but like, that's why it's going to make it interesting. But it's about, he's fighting in Chicago. That's where he's from, like that's his hometown. So it's all about selling tickets.
Now, are things better with you and Dana White now because there's a number of videos online of him?
I think with Dana, I think it was always a love-hate relationship. He loved me because I made him a lot of money. Hated me because I walked my own beat. I think and I think that's definitely, like I said, I'm not very good with politics.
And what are your thoughts on Joe Rogan?
My thoughts on Joe is, Joe is he's definitely a competitor. I've seen him actually, the first time I ever met Joe was actually in Abu Dhabi. Or not Abu Dhabi, an Abu Dhabi event with Brazil, the one that I went to for Abu Dhabi. That was the first time I met Joe. He was hanging out with Eddie Bravo, and that's when we actually first started talking about, and then he was like, oh, you're good, blah, blah, and so he was definitely a guy that I could connect with.
He does some comedy, and you're known for being kind of funny. Is that something you would consider after retirement?
Yeah, no, I've actually, the first time I ever thought I was going to do, comedy or, do, a stand-up or something like that was, I was actually talking with Pauly Shore. And then after Pauly Shore, then I moved on to, then Pauly, then I met another, besides Joe, then I met a whole bunch of other comedians. And then I found out Russell Peters was a big fan of mine. Then we bonded, and I've known Russell for, last couple of years. And we talked about, maybe I might do this comedy thing, because he gave me the first look of how comedy works, but he gave me those little nuggets of kind of like a Ken Shamrock of how the actual comedy world works.
which I thought was very interesting.
And one of my friends wanted me to ask you if you've heard of the Scottish rock band from the 80s, Big Country.
Of course, that's a Canadian band, so everybody's heard of Big Country.
And are you a fan of their music?
You know what? I don't know if I've ever heard of one of their songs besides Big Country.
And Ronda Rousey, obviously, she's doing really well in WWE now. What are your thoughts on her as a fighter and her success now as a wrestler?
I think her success as a wrestler definitely comes from her fame as an Ultimate Fighter, you know, from the UFC. I think with the UFC as a fighter, she was ahead of her time. So I used to say, because the girls were, we'll say backlogged, so it'd be like Hoist. Because she's been doing judo forever, so that'd be like Hoist doing jiu-jitsu, and people never seen jiu-jitsu, you know, from fighting. And she was fighting people that never saw judo or jiu-jitsu because they were girls, that the skill level hasn't even came up until I think years and years later, like 3 or 4 years later after she's already been fighting, they finally caught on about the jiu-jitsu, and then but they were the stand-up guys. So they added the jiu-jitsu part, and then that just changed the whole gamut for her, where she's like, oh, these people know how to punch and grapple. So I think she's like the Hoist Gracie of the women's MMA.
And you've had 38 fights now, I guess, with another one coming up next month. You've taken a lot of punishment into your fights. I'm just wondering, are you going to keep going as long as the money's there, or are you going to...
No, actually, I don't fight for the money anymore. Like, it's not the money thing. It's money definitely helps. I mean, but that's not the reason why I fight it. Like for the Bellator is I won that championship, and then, you know, once I get that championship, then I'll definitely, you know, reassess where we're at. The difference is Bellator is, you know, they do the tournaments, and they, you know, like, and you get your chances to fight for the belt. As you said with the UFC, I think Cain Velasquez, when he was injured, I think he fought. I mean, I think he has like maybe 12 fights in the UFC, 13 fights. But I think out of those 13 fights, I think he's only fought 3 or 4 people.
Yeah.
Out of 13 fights, like 3 or 4 people, that means you fought everybody like twice, 3 times, or, you know, like, and it doesn't. In MMA, you're supposed to fight that guy. Like, you fight everybody. Like, I literally can say I fought everybody except Fedor.
Yeah. And I saw your son with you earlier. He's doing MMA training, well, not MMA, but jiu-jitsu training. Do you think he could be potentially a future MMA fighter?
I hope not. I hope Jackson will never be an MMA guy, but I mean, I hope he loves MMA. I hope he loves gymnastics. I hope, you know, I know he's definitely a competitor, and he competes, but I want him to find something that's, I guess, easier on the body. I don't know. I mean, I'd rather have him be a doctor, but if he, I mean, I'm all for whatever he wants to do. Like, I want to make sure I'm supportive for whatever he wants.
Have you been married most of your MMA career?
I actually, most of it. I've been. That was one. Like, I think we just had our 10-year anniversary yesterday. No, definitely. With my wife, we've been married for 10 years, but we've been together 12. I've been fighting for 15, so 3 of those years didn't have her.
Yeah, a fan wanted me to ask you what the groupies are like in MMA, but I guess you were probably with your wife by the time you really...
Yeah, the one thing about, like, I made my name in jiu-jitsu and stuff, like, the groupie thing, that was never my thing. I mean, I've been around a lot of the other fighters with the groupies, and it's you know, it's like Vegas every night. I mean, I've been there, done that, like, so it's not like, I think, who cares?
Now, for anyone watching this that wants to follow you on social media, where can they find you?
It's super easy because it's Roy Nelson MMA. Just if you know my name and what I do, it's Roy Nelson MMA, and it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. What else do I have? I think that's it.
To finish this off, is there any message you want to say to Mirko for your big fight coming up on Bellator May 25th?
I think the only thing I have for Mirko is simple, just keep your hands up.